Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm coming on here to do a quick video. It's part update, part it's just sort of a reflection on a video that I saw as well. So for the updates, some of you may have seen that I did my first episode of my new podcast entitled Dreaming in Symbols, which is also the same name as my blog. The first episode was done last Tuesday. My special guest was Wayman29, and we discussed Carl Jung's approach to religion, and specifically how Wayman and I have benefited from reading and understanding people like Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, and how that informs our study of religion, and not taking religion literally or scripture literally, but looking at a deeper meaning behind it. And it went really well, and so I wanted to just advertise that. The first episode has been archived onto my channel, so you can check that out if you like. And so episode 2 and 3 are going to be happening within the same 7-day block. So on August, this coming Tuesday, August 4th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Wayman29 will be on again, and also I'm pleased to announce Farhan Qureshi will be on there as well. The Farhan Qureshi who was a Muslim and now he is not. He and I have dialogued in the past. We did a series of videos going back and forth. Unfortunately, his half of that exchange, I think, is gone because he's revamped his channel, Orthodox 786. But my half of the correspondence is there. So it probably looks funny to just see me talking about other videos that don't exist. But yeah, so he and I are no stranger to dialogue with each other. We see eye to eye on a lot of things. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to have Wayman and Farhan both on as special guests this coming Tuesday, the 4th, at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, within the same 7-day block, I've got on Sunday the 9th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm pleased to announce, quite an honor, to have the user Klingschor. That's right, Klingschor. He will be on my channel as a guest on the 9th. It's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then it's like 7 a.m. his time. So I'm really happy that he's agreed to come on. Oh, and I should mention that the episode for the Wayman Farhan show, that's going to be on not taking text literally. And I know that's very similar to the first episode, but we're not going to limit ourselves to just talking about Jung or Jungian psychology or Joseph Campbell. We're going to talk about just how we as individuals might approach reading the Bible or the Quran, and so we may have different approaches, main approaches that we use. And we're also going to talk about some historical aspects as well regarding the New Testament, and perhaps the Quran as well. And since Farhan and I are going to be on the show together, I'm sure we could think of a dozen topics to go through, and hopefully Farhan will want to come on more than once in the future. The topic that Klingschor and I are going to be discussing is the origins of Islam. We haven't narrowed that down yet to a specific topic, and actually maybe I'll leave that up to all of you if you want to throw out some suggestions of some things that Klingschor and I can consider to do, really specific. If we don't come up with something specific, we'll just start talking about the origins of Islam and the critical historical approach to studying perhaps, Hadith or the Quran, Quranic text, or tradition, or what have you. So yeah, I'm really excited to have these individuals, Wayman, Farhan, Qureshi, and Klingschor, who have agreed to come on to my podcast on the 4th and the 9th of this month. So again, that's 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Tuesday the 4th with Farhan and Wayman29, and Sunday the 9th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with Klingschor. So that is the update regarding the podcast. So I also wanted to announce that I started a Facebook page that's connected to this channel. So there's an Aussie CDA Facebook page, and you can find that link along with the link to my Twitter account, my blog, my Google Plus account obviously is there by default, and my Goodreads account. So if you'd like to follow me on any of those social media platforms, please feel free to do so, and you'll find those links on the main page of this channel. I wanted to start the Facebook page because I'd like to have a chance to post things there and have some interesting conversations hopefully take place, so that we're not just limited to YouTube comments. Of course, I think those are great too, or even tweets, on Twitter. Those are great as well, but just thought it'd be kind of cool to have some, back and forth on Facebook. So why limit myself when these social media outlets are there? So yeah, please subscribe, follow me on all those, Goodreads, Twitter, Facebook, my blog, etc. And also for episode 2, and I'll probably be posting the episode 3 preview before, or the info on Google+. But if you go to Google+ right now, you can see the Q&A option is up right now. So if you have any questions, or any comments, or anything, any subjects that you would like to have Wayman and Farhan and I specifically tackle during the show, now would be the time to post a question in the Q&A option that's up. It should be up right now. Also, I'll be posting one of these for Klingschor and I for our Sunday the 9th show, and same thing, if there's a specific question you want Klingschor and I to tackle during the show, that's a place to do it as well. Yeah, so that's a podcast. Those are some cool social media stuff that I wanted to announce to just sort of expand what's happening here on my channel. So yeah, let me get to the point of this particular video. So, as you know, my previous video was about the controversy between Hamza Zortzis and EssenceOfThought, Peter, with regards to Dr. Petrovich's article regarding cognitive core beliefs with regards to, do young individuals, do infants, do children start off with this innateness or this core cognitive belief in a divinity. Hamza had cited this article apparently more than once, as Stop Spamming has shown, and Hamza seems to be scripted, and there was some controversy because he was making claims or interpretations about the article that didn't really pan out with what the article actually said, but he presented it as such. My concern was what the article actually was talking about, which is not what Hamza was portraying, and I thought that he pretty much was misusing the article, and I made a video on the subject. Now Hamza, a few times, to multiple people, to myself, to Stop Spamming, and to Peter on Twitter, basically in a way of challenging everyone who was disagreeing with him, kept saying, email the academic. So I did. I emailed the academic. I emailed Professor Petrovich. I sent her my video where I talked about her article. I also asked her a very specific question to clarify her thoughts on atheism, and that was about 3 days ago. We're now verging on to 4 days without getting a response from her. Now I don't know how long it took for her to respond to Hamza, because in the email when Hamza quoted her, she said something like, sorry for the delay, or something like that. As I'm talking to you right now, I just checked my email account to see if she had responded, and I'm looking, and no, she hasn't responded. So when she does respond, I will no doubt make a video just about what she says. But even if she never responds, that's cool, because I think that her article is fascinating, and I would like to use that as a segue to talk about specifically Carl Jung, in more detail about Jung's approach to the psychology of religion. So I'm probably going to talk about a number of his works that have to do with religion in particular, and just make some videos where I summarize and talk about what are some things I agree with him, things I disagree with him about, just for everyone's benefit, who may not be familiar with his approach to the study of religion. Because Petrovich, in her article that everyone's been arguing about, talks about the difference between what you learn, a learned belief, so this is something that, like, through education or doctrine or a religious creed, versus organic, or as Jung would put it, spontaneous belief. In the video that I made, my previous video, I said that she was pretty much echoing Carl Jung, and she is. I mean, he made the same point back when he wrote the series of essays called that makes up the psychology of religion. This was published by the Yale University Press in 1938. So he, ahead of Petrovich, essentially came up with the same conclusions, that there was spontaneous belief and beliefs that are learned later in life via a number of outside external sources. So thought that'd be cool to talk about that in a future video as well. Now, coming to the main point of this video, I just want to be very brief. One thing that I noticed with my observation about Hamza and the atheists or the skeptics that totally don't like him and make very good videos against his position, the common denominator is Hamza will, in the past, he has talked about specific verses. I'm reminded of the embryo, the so-called embryology verses that are in the Quran, and he interprets it literally. I mean, he reads the verses and he goes, okay, not only am I going to, it's like a two-step thing. Not only am I going to take this literally, I'm going to find scientific evidence to back up my literal reading of this text. And then you have people who very much care about the integrity of science, who come along and go, okay, your utilization of these scientific sources is questionable, and I don't, and they find a way of basically poking holes into the utilization of outside source material. And it got me thinking, not only because again, my current position is that the majority of scripture I don't take literally. So I did stumble across a video by Peter, by Essence of Thought, where he debunks the claim that many Muslims make regarding chapter 25, verse 53 in the Quran, regarding the barrier between two seas. And the translation I have says, "It was he who sent down the two seas rolling, the one sweet and fresh, the other salt and bitter, and set a rampart between them, an insurmountable barrier." When you read the majority of the tafsirs and commentaries that are available to the public, so online, and I checked Abdul Yusuf Ali and a few other ones that I have, it's pretty vague what this could mean. Two seas, according to this translation. What are the two seas? We're never actually told what the two seas are. And I think Ibn Kathir tries to bring up some good argumentation, but I read it and it wasn't too convincing to me. I mean, it all seems rather ambiguous. Ibn Abbas, Al-Jalalan. The only clue that I got was when I looked at Muhammad Assad, because Muhammad Assad does a really good job of talking about a potential literal historical interpretation and then like the mystical esoteric interpretation, right? He says that the salt and the bitter seas perhaps represent two conflicting personalities, or two spiritual states that are in conflict, and they will not mix. You're either one or the other. And then I stumbled across the particular tafsir that's on altafsir.com, which is the Kashf al-Azrar tafsir, which is a Sufi tafsir. But before I jump into the Sufi tafsir, I really want to point this out, because again, I think the conflict is essentially two individuals. So you've got, and I'm not even really picking Peter specifically. I'm just saying that he might represent a very honest response. So you've got a typical Muslim apologist who makes the claim based on a literal reading that attempts to use a scientific outside source, outside of scripture, to prove a literal reading. And of course you're going to have a response that's going to respond in kind. You're going to have a person who's going to look at what the text says, literally, and analyze the scientific evidence that is brought forth to support a literal reading of the text. Now, the problem with that is, what about individuals who don't read the text literally? Or what if it's somebody who does read the text literally, but doesn't actually try to apply a scientific, like a very deep scientific interpretation? What about that? So really, I'm here to basically offer two alternatives to understanding this verse. This is not me standing up for Peter again. This is not me actually standing up for the Quran either. This is simply me standing up for the position of not taking scripture literally, but maybe still getting something out of it. So the first point is credit is due to Klingschor. In a recent article that Klingschor posted on his blog, and this was something that was, I think, brought up by Tom Holland as well, though I will check and make the necessary editing if I need to. So look in the more info section if I need to correct myself. But a historical interpretation of this could be that if the Quran was written by a group of people, or was orally transmitted by a group of people that lived in the part of the Middle East that, as Tom Holland suggests, is closer to Israel-Palestine, as opposed to being close to what is modern-day Mecca, right? So we're getting close to northwestern, the Levant, northwestern Arabia, sort of southern Syria. We're getting more in that direction. Mount Sinai. We're pushing, geographically speaking, in that direction as opposed to the Hijaz or Mecca and Medina. So if that's the case, then as has been suggested by folks like Tom Holland and Klingschor, who have studied the early historical sources on Islam, the origins of Islam in the Quran, the two seas could actually be something like the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Or it could be the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. Or, so the barrier is actually landmass. It's actually describing something that the audience of the text would have understood. So if people during the time of Muhammad, or the early Muslims, if they would have heard this particular passage, it's safe to say that it should have made sense to them. I mean, this is not something that I'm saying is like, a total revelation, right? I mean, this is something that, like, when you study literature, when you study historical documents, you start asking questions of what would the audience have thought. And I actually just pulled it up right now. So, indeed, Klingschor does mention this in his article. It's on his blog called Researching Islam. So it's research-islam.blogspot.com. The Quranic milieu, where was the Quran written? Excellent article, which I've read a few times. The two C's, he specifically talks about this verse and his reference to it. And he says that it could be the Quran refers to two of the several bodies of water that bound the Levant, such as the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea. And he says the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea are separated by a barrier of Sinai. Right? So, and he talks about, there could be different ways of looking at this, but it's based on a historical and geographical understanding of the text. So again, there's no mention of, water evaporation, or, rivers that do enter the sea, and do their properties mix, or do they not? I mean, this is something that, again, a literal reading with an attempt to convince people based on science, that is where this argument is going. But those of us who kind of sidestep that and go, well, is it really necessary to apply that type of interpretation to the text? I would say not. Even though what Klingschor is suggesting is a quote-unquote literal reading of the text, it's bound by history. It is essentially a historical literal interpretation. It's you're reading the text and you're thinking, what did the original audience think the text was saying? And one could argue that they weren't thinking about the water cycle. They weren't thinking about anything about science in particular. They were talking about the two bodies of water that frankly don't mix because there's a landmass between them. So all credit to Klingschor for that, and I think Tom Holland mentioned that as well, but I could be mistaken about that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the mystical interpretation, or the deeper interpretation, the psychological interpretation of it. What could that mean? So now I turn to the Sufi Tafsir, which I'll link in the description below. And this is what it says. He it is who mixed the two oceans, the one sweet, delicious, the one salty. He is one solitary letter that alludes to the solitary Lord. It is neither a name nor an attribute, but an allusion to a Lord who has no name and no attribute. The one letter is the H, so it's who, he, is the resting place of the breath. This is a very common Sufi concept, to say who, right? Do you not see that when you make, so that he talks about, who and the variation of it. Whenever you say any of the names and attributes, you say them from the tip of the tongue, and he goes on to talk about that. Okay. So then, he says the difference between someone who is trying to understand the real, right? Trying to understand the absolute, trying to understand God. And this is a great man. So then the Sufi commentator talks about, tells a story. A great man was walking on a road, and a dervish was coming towards him. He said, "Where are you coming from?" He, the great man, said, He. He said, "Where are you going?" The other, "He." The dervish again, "What is your goal?" The great man, "He." No matter what he asked, the other guy replied, "He." This is like what someone said, so much is your image in my eyes that whatever I see I fancy you. This is a quote from somewhere. And he it is who mixed the two oceans. This one sweet, delicious, the one salty, bitter. The salty ocean has no sweetness, and the sweet no saltiness. The two are one in substantiality, but God in his power made them differ in attribute. In the same way he created hearts, some of which are quarries of certainty and recognition, the others of which are a loci of doubt and ingratitude. Sweet delicious is an allusion to the hearts of the friends, which are bright with the light of guidance and adorned with the ornament of faith, and within which is shining the radiance of Tawhid's sun. The second page. It's loading here. Salty bitter is an allusion to the hearts of the estranged, which have become dark through the darkness of unbelief and of doubt, and remained in the bewilderment of ignorance. One is put on the robe of elevation without deviation, the other's foot is shackled with the abasement and degradation without iniquity. And indeed, when the exalted Lord wants to place the crown of exaltation on the servant's head, he gives him access to the carpet of secret whisperings and keeps the road of faith bright for him. When he wants to place a scar of loss on his cheek, he drives him from the station of proximity with the whip of vengeance. And he to whom God, as signs no light, has no light. 24:40. Okay, so that is a Sufi interpretation. Very poetic. It's very mystical. But that is a different way of looking at it. And indeed, Muhammad Asad, in his commentary of the Quran, he sort of talks about more of a literal reading, but then he does say that, hey, this could be talking about two psychological states, or two spiritual states. One bitter and one sweet, and it's basically two types of individuals who are in two states, and they don't mix. You can't be both at the same time. You're one or the other, okay? So again, I'm not saying that one interpretation is better than the other, nor am I saying that one is the one that everyone needs to adopt. I'm simply using this as an illustration that you don't have to read all of Scripture literally. And in fact, you avoid the whole argument, the whole debates about, the water cycle, and about, you avoid all of that by not taking the text literally. Or at least asking the question, what might it be saying historically, which in this case turns out to make more sense than trying to apply a scientific external approach to it. So, yeah, I don't mean to derail anyone's arguments. By all means, the debates raging between the people who either have to approach the text literally because they're responding to certain apologists that also take it literally. By all means, that stuff's entertaining. Again, I pop some popcorn and I watch and I enjoy it. But I can't help myself. I really feel strongly about sharing this perspective because it frankly doesn't get a lot of airtime, because it's not accepted by many people who make videos here on YouTube or publish blogs. But again, it's something that I think makes sense to a lot of people. It's sort of like a no-brainer, like, well, yeah, not taking the text literally. And also, it can help you, help individuals who feel like the need to drag in outside material. I mean, it could very well be that when the original audience of the Quran heard this, heard this verse for the first time, that they were just thinking, oh yeah, okay, so it's God who created, the ocean and fresh water, and yeah, there's that barrier, Sinai is that barrier. What do you know? So it's an attribution. It's basically saying, oh yeah, the divine is awesome because the divine, set these things in motion, or if you're a straight up creationist, as an artisan, crafted this geographical or geological, what have you, phenomena, or fact, right? They're separated by the Sinai Peninsula. So you avoid the whole mess. You avoid the whole argument by doing this. So yeah, just food for thought. Again, I'm not trying to say that one's better than the other, nor am I trying to argue anything. I'm just presenting an alternative perspective, and hopefully this is a preview to what we'll be discussing on my my podcast on Tuesday with Wayman29 and Farhan Qureshi, when we discuss a non-literal understanding and approach to Scripture. So again, please check out my new Facebook, follow me on Twitter, my blog, Google+, check out my Goodreads if you'd like, and stay tuned for the podcast. Again, this coming Tuesday, the 4th 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and also Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where my special guest will be Klingschor, where we'll discuss the origins of Islam and related topics. Thank you all for watching. Peace be with you all.